I'm refurbishing my South Bend 9-inch Model C lathe. This is the gear cover for it, and it comes with 2 identification plates on it. This gear cover was just gunked up and nasty, had some rust on it. I've gone ahead and cleaned that up for the most part. I've removed this ID plate here already, just showed the instructions on which gears to use for threading and had the serial number on it. That plate buffed it. I've got an epoxy coat on it to help give it some real good protection. So I'm going to show you how I did that, and I'm going to use this plate here. These plates have rivets on them, and they're extremely simple to push out. I just used a pin punch, and they're twist rivets. You take a look at it, you can see that it's a little bit rough. It's a lot better than the other plate, though. The other plate was almost illegible. So we'll get this one cleaned up, looking nice and shiny, and put a good coat of epoxy over it to keep it well protected for the long term. The first step I will do is use a gray coarse roughing block on this wheel here to get most of the remaining gunk and scratches off of it. Then I will change to a white polishing stone on a separate wheel over here with a softer cotton wheel, and that'll put the polish on it and give it a good sheen. Now that I'm done with the rough polishing, I'm going to go ahead and clean off any residue left from that grit so that I don't transfer it onto the polishing wheel. And so you can see this plate is already starting to look pretty good. Alright, so now one more cleaning, and this will be ready for a top coat. I'm sure there's a better way to do all of this polishing scenario, but for somebody on a budget, I think this works pretty good. There you can see that this is very shiny. Doesn't look quite new, but it looks a whole lot better than it did. Now that the plate is all clean, I'm going to go ahead and mix the epoxy. I use the stems of old foam brushes. I cut off the foam portion of it because I want something round to mix with. I think that it creates a few less air bubbles in the epoxy than using something square or rectangle. Using the West System epoxy, this is specific for a finish, using a 105 and a 207 hardener. But these pumps don't work exactly all that well. You have to be kind of particular how you use them so you can get just the right amount of mixture, since this is a 3-to-1 ratio. So I'll pump in here, which this one pumped good this time. Good, both of them did this time. And then I will mix up for probably about 3 solid minutes. Now I will pour the epoxy in here. There's several air bubbles that did show up in here from mixing. I think it's because I got a low temperature in my shop. Using a foam brush, I'll put this on as even as I can. This stuff levels out pretty easily, so I don't have to worry too much about brush strokes. Just doing a very light touch with this. Pretty much the weight of the brush is doing the work. A couple of little air bubbles within the epoxy, so just do a quick torch run on it. And that cleaned it up. I'll transfer this to a clean piece of cardboard and let it dry for at least 24 hours. Usually the West System becomes at its full hardness at about 72 hours or longer. Well, here's the panels completed. They've got the epoxy coating on them and it's dried. Came out pretty good, and they still maintain some flexibility. So that way they can go back on the machine without cracking the epoxy.